Yo, good morning, traders, and welcome back to another episode of Market in the Morning. I'm your host, Kevin Dubrisky, and with us, we have special guest Jeev, one of the co-founders and a spectacular trader at that. And we're going to go over some key levels and explain to you guys why markets are at all-time highs, and also cover some of the headlines that are going on right now, too, because a lot of people are switching their bias back bullish for the S&P and NASDAQ. But is it really going to hold is the question, and using market, we're able to get that answer. So guys, hit that like and subscribe button because Market in the Morning starts right now. Yo, Jeev, good morning, man.
How's it going, Kevin, man? Thank you for having me on the show. Always an honor, always a privilege to be discussing markets with you.
Bro, always a pleasure to have you on, man. It's always a good show.
100%. So obviously we got some huge event going on right now. Epic Fury press conference round 2. Now, I want to tell the audience right away, I am personally shocked by the V-shaped recovery on SPX. Everything else has been making sense to me. The gold plays, dollar movement, oil's been nice and solid still. But SPX took me for a ride. I took a couple of heavy losses trying to short it, expecting a ground invasion faster, or the Strait of Hormuz disruptions to hold more weight aggressively. Even I should have been sticking closer to the market bias that was given to us as well. That's a mistake we can make as traders once in a while. But with this press conference, I think we need to be very, very careful with how these politicians speak in the serpent's tongue. We have to be careful of what they are saying in between the lines. Now, right now in the market news feed, we're getting flooded with headlines from War Secretary Hegseth and General Kane, right?
Yep.
And to me, I might sound crazy with my tinfoil hat on. I think the blockade with 10,000 Marines sent was a modern day Trojan horse type of strategy to implement a ground invasion without the market shock and public shock of saying a ground invasion, right, to saying it in a different way, communicating it differently so the shock is not as aggressive to markets. Because we've seen that even though SPX has had this huge recovery, oil is still not back to pre-war prices. Oil's still been hovering in an area where it's still a higher risk impact on inflation if prolonged. And looking at some of the real world information, Strait of Hormuz disruptions still continue. We're still getting those supply disruptions on oil, fertilizer, other commodities and goods. Freight costs have gone 200%. The way I'm seeing it is the markets can remain delusional and irrational longer than I can remain solvent. But I do not see this war coming to an end just yet. And I think the fallout of the economic activity disruption is going to be a huge shock, or at least a very volatile shock for a short period of time in markets, because you can only try to brush the mess under the rug for so long and buy time for a resolution, where if that resolution does not take place, the eventual huge impacts on economic activity need to be digested by the market more accurately, representing the situation. So we've seen the ceasefire expiring soon and violated with all this confusion. We have seen the U.S. doing a double blockade in the Strait, adding another blockade on top of Iran's blockade. And with that blockade, they've conveniently sent 10,000 military personnel sitting on Iran's doorstep right now. Well, Israel continues to bomb Lebanon, and we still have tensions on edge. Other
Yeah.
sensitive, risky assets like Bitcoin are not really highlighting the same level of optimism and greed. Or if you're looking at something like gold, it's not even back to pre war prices yet. And oil, even with all the attempts on suppressing oil price, is still very elevated, historically speaking, at $90 a barrel, right? So I don't think this situation's over yet. I am going to see what they sprinkle in with this press conference, but they may just say a whole bunch of nothing to continue to buy time. But I would love to know your opinion on the matter.
Yeah, no, that's usually their go-to. They sprinkle a whole lot of nothing, like you said. They buy time. Right now, markets are really driven by the optimism of that ceasefire. That ceasefire headline is really what pivoted that V-shaped recovery on the SPX. And I'm with you. I was a
Yeah.
surprise. I thought we were going to get that V-shape, and then it would just start to crash again.
Yeah.
But here we are, all-time highs. We have to remember, too, before the war happened, we were already experiencing things like much higher yields. The dollar was looking stronger. There's a lot of things.
Rate cut bets were
Inflation,
dwindling.
the
And
Fed,
like,
yeah,
right?
yep,
There's already other things that were taking place that were causing some potential doubts. Like even at that time, I remember before the war, there was already some AI valuation concerns where there's
exactly.
huge amounts of investments and promises and productivity from AI to from these AI companies to their investors were looking like they're not going to be met, and it was so disproportionate with how high expenses are.
Yeah.
But they continue to eat those costs and forward look that growth will be amplified. And I think one of the reasons why we saw this V-shaped recovery with the healthier liquidity conditions back in tech, that expectations are these companies are still going to have huge IPOs, and you have to set a fantastic environment in the macro market to allow these few companies that are carrying the market to continue to thrive and keep that image there, that everything is a-okay, right? So I think it is a little bit alarming how volatile the recovery has been on SPX. And I also don't want to be buying at fresh record breaking highs. I would like some level of a healthy pullback to at least ride the optimism. But I am keeping a close eye on oil price, on gold price, to be a little bit more of a true depiction of what's going on with the geopolitical tension so far. Because I think there's going to be a point where if there's not a solution, some of these real world disruptions, like the Strait of Hormuz, having limited activity, having no deal, the potential that after the ceasefire, Israel's going to attack Iran, Iran's going to attack Arab neighbors and GCC infrastructure and US infrastructure. And the more prolonged it is, the deeper the damage and harder to recover, right? So it is very interesting, very unique times. The market hasn't seen a V-shaped recovery that aggressive in like 100 years, apparently, right? So crazy times. But to be honest, even though I got bitten in the ass and made a couple of poor time decisions, which is 100% my responsibility as a risk manager, a risk taker in these markets. This has also been, for me, in my last 8 to 10 years in the markets, one of the best periods to learn, one of the best periods to refine my skills, have a deeper understanding of the markets since the pandemic, right? So there's so much to learn about different contexts of fundamentals, and market has been a great support with that. But should we check out the dashboard, see what's going on with headlines right now and everything?
Bro, let's do it.
So, me still looking at something critical like oil here, for example, I'm still holding pretty bullish above these prices, which I think we may still liquidity grab to. But on the swing trading time frame, holding above 85s. On the day trading time frame, holding above 90. That $5 range and play from higher time frame to intraday. On top of all of these fundamental catalysts is what's keeping me more confident that there is still going to be another volatile pop to the upside on oil. Now, the one thing we have to understand for the audience, market psychology wise, is even though you may have inevitable real world events that could lead to an energy crisis, like it's happened before in history, or a world war, God forbid, but they happen. It happened twice before, right? It is, even with this going on, it is in the best interest of leaders around the world, of governments united around the world, corporations, to keep oil price down and stock price up. So you are going to have that disconnect during the early timeline of a fundamental catalyst like a war, where the markets are trying to be forward looking and overly optimistic of a solution to keep energy prices down, keep inflation concerns down, keep stock markets bullish, investors happy, companies with their $1 trillion valuations. And they're going to say, well, the solution will come soon. The supply disruption will be over soon. Production will ramp up soon. We're going to see those flows and freight costs come down soon. But yes, sometimes those solutions come and the markets were right to support that continued optimism in stocks. But there are many other times in history where that solution doesn't come, and the shock of an energy crisis or energy prices being elevated for a prolonged period will eventually need to be digested. And I think with this catalyst, we're at a critical point here where if this goes on for another month, it's going to be very hard to ignore how much economic activity damage that's causing. And I think we can see this with how a lot of smaller countries are so desperate and urgent to get a solution, because their already crumbling economies are facing even more downside pressure now, are facing even more negative implications with the fallout of this conflict. So when I'm looking at something like oil here, day trading bias still bullish. Even with all the suppression attempts, we've still maintained pretty decent structure as well. You can see White House enforces blockade. That's causing more disruptions. We've still had the U.S. halting Iran sea trade. Pentagon, I don't know if you saw that headline the other day. The Pentagon is going to all these U.S. manufacturers, automakers, to boost weapons production. So you're having 10,000 military personnel sent over there. You're having a double blockade. You're having a boost in weapons production, huge budget being requested for this war. And apparently we're supposed to expect it's done and they're just there to chit chat and have tea together and a nice, good old time, right? So it is a crazy period of time where we still have the U.S. sending thousands of more troops to the Middle East, right? And Iran war cutting oil supply. We still have that supply shock. So I don't think the energy crisis or the impact of energy is really being felt yet. And I don't think oil is going to see higher time frame bears just yet. I still think there's some weeks to months before oil goes to pre-war prices and the worst of a potential ground invasion or further deeper conflict post ceasefire gets priced in. But what are you thinking about oil? What's your 2 cents on oil?
I'm with you. Oil's definitely not in its regular range between like even high 50s to about 80s. We're still around 90 shows extension, but we're definitely not as strong as we were. And something 100%. Else to keep an eye on. It's funny, we mentioned this, I think, last episode, how oil is now our VIX to determine that strength.
Yeah.
VIX was finally able to close below 20 on the weekly time frame for the first time since February. So it is showing some relief there too. But oil's really going to be that telltale.
I think oil is going to be that tell, like you said. Oil. That point you made was I absolutely loved it since the last stream. That for this context of the fundamental event, oil is the new VIX. So for me, if oil continues to hold from that 85 to 90 price range, and we do see a ground invasion, we do see the ceasefire expire, and more energy infrastructure damage continued, prolonged, eventually that information is going to be digested where you can't keep forward looking for a solution with all of this mess right in front of your eyes, right? So, and then that's where you see that if oil prices start to surge again, central bank policy positioning adjusts accordingly with higher inflation expectations, kicking any expectations of rate cuts down the road. Even though a rate hike won't happen anytime soon, that possibility comes on the table, which starts to change sentiment and positioning. And you see a bit more pressure on gold from all-time highs, dollar stabilize again, oil hold steady, and stock markets get some profit taking, maybe an aggressive bearish move. But now that it's from all-time highs again, who cares? Right? SPX correcting again on inflation concerns spiking and a ground invasion from all-time highs is a lot better for price stability, shareholder value than it dropping from 6,500, which is something I've learned through this fundamental timeline and event, right?
100%. It's much easier for markets to range within the area they've just traded in than it is for them to make new zones.
Right? Exactly. And then if you were having a ground invasion, pushed out to the public and mainstream. Well, SPX was already just printing a lower low. The probability of panic selling, the probability of like a sharper volatile drop that can have more fallout and negative implications gets back on the table. So like we said, the governments around the world, corporations around the world, it is in their best interest to keep oil price down, stock prices up. But sometimes these catalysts will change that.
Yeah, and a lot of people forget too that, guys, oil prices doesn't just mean, oh, high gas prices. It impacts everything overall, right? It impacts how
100%.
much companies have to spend on ship oil and gas, right, to deliver their products. It's going to
Everything.
raise price. That's why higher oil impacts inflation.
100%, bro. Great point as well. But yeah, something else I'm staring at is gold as well. I think with higher inflation reducing gold's hedge appeal at current prices, something we were talking about very specifically last time, gold can still be vulnerable. Like, don't get me wrong, gold is a safe haven store of value. It's designed to go up to continue increasing that value growth from a historical standpoint through civilizations. But you are going to have these periods of time with normal routine market mechanics where it's not as favorable as a risk hedge at such record high prices, where we saw a trend parabolically for 3 years already. Since 2023, banking failures of Silicon Valley Bank, Credit Suisse, Israel Hamas tensions back then. Then you had Trump's 2025 trade war. Then you had that metals mania central bank purchasing surge in 2026 peak into the deep 5,000. So I think gold can still see a little bit of relief, bearish moves on the day trading time frame, reflecting market analysis here, before jumping back onto higher time frame swing trading buys with a bit more confidence that you can hold here for a consistent period without too much struggle. Right now, I think gold could still be vulnerable, especially if we're seeing those intermarket correlations and flows adjust to inflation concerns rising again. Because one thing I want to talk about is PPI as well, right? PPI and CPI. Now, obviously, with the day trading timeframes, forecasts mean everything. If PPI is increasing, but the forecast expected way higher and it comes out lower than that, markets are going to say this is a good thing. We could still see more rate cuts, right? But we still have to understand PPI and CPI jumping so aggressively with just the recent surge in energy prices is still a major roadblock and disruption point for the Feds to continue a smooth sailing path on their dual mandate and cut rates and have healthier liquidity conditions much faster, right?
Yep.
So we saw Jerome Powell talking about that the last FOMC. That's why with last PPI that came out, it jumped to 4%, but it was below the forecast of 4.5% or whatever. 4% jump is still something to keep an eye out for if this war is prolonged in the context of that, right?
Yes, the 4% still double their 2% target. Got to remember that. Huge.
Anyways, some cool breaking news headlines coming in here, but Hegseth is still going on, the war secretary with his press conference, but we can see them pushing for other countries to help in the Strait of Hormuz as well, right? Which would be an escalation.
Question: what do you think? You think once this term is over, you think they're going to change the name back to Department of Defense?
Yeah. I think like a lot of these presidents and leaders, politicians are nowhere near as aggressive as Trump. So they're probably going to go back to something more professional on the global stage, right?
Yep.
Rather than warmonger Hegseth comes to the right. Like we're in some dystopian future, like in some
seriously
some Mad Max shit, right?
Yep.
But yeah, man. So
crazy.
Right now we're just keeping an eye on the press conference that's going on. Epic Fury Round 2 by the White House, Hegseth and General Kane. Jobless claims came out, but it's pretty negligible. It's still in pretty healthy territory, highlighting the resilience of the U.S. economy compared to some of its global counterparts, which are crumbling a little bit more, like Canada, UK, Eurozone. So we'll see if we get any defining information from Hegseth or Trump. But so far, what I'm focusing on with the war is that the ceasefire expiry is around the corner. It's like on the 21st or 22nd.
Yep.
The Lebanon and Israel discussions, if you heard of, those fell apart this morning. There's been no phone call. Israel still bombing Lebanon, right? And there also those rumors that there's a second round of talks in Islamabad, Pakistan again. That's fell apart. And apparently there's no venue or time set. And you got the U.S. with 10,000. Let me explain something. a critical war years ago, back in the day, I'm Unk now, the war in Afghanistan obviously had impact to oil prices, commodities, brought some global uncertainty and doubt. Now, whenever there's a war timeline, a ground invasion is always the next step and next escalation. You understand that, right?
Of
Like
course.
you go from your air warfare, your drones and missiles, your economic sanctions, and then it's like, okay, we need to accomplish more ground invasion. And then, God forbid, other countries get involved in world war, which has happened, but we haven't seen that obviously in a while. So with the ground invasion in Afghanistan, obviously it's a different scale. Times have changed a little bit, but the first wave ground invasion in Afghanistan, the U.S. sent 1,300 troops, 1,300. With this blockade, aka modern Trojan horse, in my opinion, the U.S. has 10,000 Marines, 100 fighter jets, 3 aircraft carriers sitting at Iran's doorstep right now, right? Breathing down their neck with their right. So to me, this is not really a time that's showing me chit chat is going on or positive talks are going on. It's showing me something is really bubbling behind the scenes. And when you see the amount of misinformation being shared on mainstream media, the amount of misinformation and confusion is the same as the pandemic.
Yep.
During the pandemic, people are like, is this a deadly virus or is it not? If I kiss my grandma, is she going to die or is she okay? Is this a 90% kill rate or a 1% kill rate? Are the lockdowns going to be 1 week or the lockdowns going to be a year? That lack of clarity, it creates exhaustion. It creates panic, uncertainty. You have these different variants coming out. You have all this uncertainty building. This war's been the same. Is the war ending soon or is the war over or is it still going? Trump said the war is ending 15 times. Trump said they won the war 10 times. Is a deal taking place or is a deal falling apart? Is a ceasefire good or is a ceasefire violated? Are the talks about a discussion about a good negotiation still going on or is that broke? You know what I mean? The amount of confusion, it's done on purpose to create a level of exhaustion where you just don't even want to deal with the situation. And that's where the major moves start to happen behind the scenes and money really starts to flow, right? When everybody's distracted, exhausted, tuned out. And then these corrupt leaders start to do what they really want. So I think so far with the ceasefire agreement talks, the talks about talking in Pakistan, I think it's all been damage control, buying time, trying to extend optimism as much as possible, where the demands of Iran and the demands of US to actually have an agreement, one of them needs to fully surrender. I can't see the ego of an empire like the US admitting defeat and surrendering. And I can't see Iran, who whether you like it or not, has had an edge in this conflict because they're using cheap, easy to produce drones to cause billions in damage. And they were even doing things that the president himself didn't expect. Like when they didn't get help from their Muslim brothers and Arab neighbors, they had no problem bombing Israel, US linked infrastructure in those countries. Dubai, which was seen as a safe haven, flipped that status overnight. Saudi Arabia started panicking like, fuck, I didn't know they were going to hit me too. Right. So
we don't want any part of this. It's sort of like the NATO situation. Trump's like, why isn't NATO helping us? Because they don't want to help us in a war we're starting.
Exactly. And that's a great point because of going back to the misinformation. First, Trump goes, we don't need the strait. Then open the fucking strait. Then he goes, we've destroyed Iran, but NATO, come help us immediately. Or like, you know what I mean? It's crazy. It's crazy, the misinformation, how they're trying to throw all of these false distractions while something different is really going on and bubbling behind the scenes. So
yeah, it's funny about the whole straight thing. Have you ever seen the meme where it's like Obama putting on the ribbon for himself?
Yeah.
Trump putting on the ribbon for himself. Like, you close the strait, now I open the strait.
Yeah.
It's already open. What do you mean?
Yeah, right. So crazy times for sure. Nothing really going on in the markets. It looks like Hegseth said a whole bunch of nothing. One thing I didn't like about his press conference was him trying to be righteous and preach. I don't like when politicians, speaking in the serpent's tongue, try to cover and mask an act of destruction, corruption, and conquest with righteous, just, good behind a Bible verse or behind a, you know what I mean?
Horrible.
Like it's like, how can you say you're a man? Really? How can you say you're a man of faith and behave this way? Like you're manipulating people using their faith as an advantage point, which is ancient tactics of manipulation, masking conquest with religious faith and saying this is for the good, right?
That's usually the core of religion, is to manipulate a large amount of people.
Right. So when he's using that tactics and trying to take advantage of the good faith of people, it just shows how low they're going right now and how this situation is still very tense and on edge, in my opinion.
Something I wanted to cover on gold real quick, price and just where it's at right now. A lot of people made a lot of money on gold, even from August 2025, right? Gold went up over 62%, over 2,000
Trade
points.
war.
Yeah, it just rallied. So whenever I look at markets and I look at, okay, we're in a bit more of a pullback phase, I always want to know, where's there the most pain?
Yes, that's a good question to ask.
And right over here, October 2025, this last pivot down here, 4,000 key cycle level. I know that all these people that have been buying gold this whole time, they've been green for a year now. Well, guess what? Maybe now's the time they go
They're
red
gonna
on
feel
their
some
position.
pain.
Yep.
And I love your chart and I love that explanation. And I also love that since that peak price, a lot of the more aggressive movement has shifted to bearish. And you get these volatile bearish flush outs and then a slow creep bullish back up to keep their euphoria high and then melt them. Like the creep up we're doing right now on your screen is looking like exactly that creep up just before the flush out earlier. You have right there, right?
Yep. And something to note too, when we have that consistent buying, look how strong our volume was this whole time.
That's a great comparison as well.
Yeah, now we see, look how weak our volume is lately. Ever since February, since the war began, it's been a lot more uncertainty. Gold really lost, like you mentioned, its appeal.
Yeah, at such high prices, you have to ask yourself, yes, gold is a safe haven, fundamentally speaking, black and white textbook definition, but is it a safe haven or a great hedge of risk at 5,000? I don't, with inflation concerns and rate cut bets, I don't think so, right? Maybe when it goes back to what you said at 4,000, 3,500, that yellow, then sure, you might see more buying into there. But I think we still need to be cautious about how vulnerable it can be at these prices. Even gold could start consolidating at these prices for the next 2 years.
Yeah, right? 100%. 100%. Something to mention too, guys, because we're day traders, right? Most people in here are day traders. We want to be trading with that current trend. We see that there's optimism in the markets. We see that we've been rallying. Don't try to give yourself that excuse to short it right now. Follow that intraday trend.
100%.
You know,
it is important to us, right? Especially a great point I was discussing, like within the community, was something like a war. Us as day traders, we're looking at the markets in minutes and hours and then days. But something like a war, these politicians are looking at a war through a timeline of days, weeks, and months. So we may see a ceasefire agreement come into the scene. And because we're slaves to volatility and we want action of either optimism to play or fear, right? We want to see that change in flows. We're hoping a ceasefire lasts 2 days. When a ceasefire can last 2 weeks. That's why you see this sentiment of traders in the market saying like, fuck, is this war done yet? Or is the war over yet? Or is this ceasefire going to expire yet? Because they're just itching like crackheads, waiting for the next major move, as we're all slaves to volatility in this game, right? So that's what I was talking about with me having that learning experience through this context specifically, is that whenever you have a war that's extremely volatile, could lead to like a world war, or could lead to more economic fallout activity in major countries, you're always going to have prolonged periods of negotiations or uncertainty that you should adjust to accordingly as a trader. You shouldn't be thinking that decisions for this critical war involving so many governments, decisions are going to be made in hours or days. You should understand that decisions can be made in days, weeks, and months. So then you can adjust your execution accordingly to that, to play the periods of indecision or volatility coming back into the scene as well, right?
Exactly. I got a quick question in the chat asked, how do you get the volume on TradingView? This is just the basic volume that comes with TradingView. If you don't have it on your chart, you would just hit indicators, look up volume, and it's literally the first one. It's the plain volume that comes up. It's going to give you volume on the subgraph. I will mention, guys, if it's a big red bar, it does not mean all selling volume. The color of the volume bar is determined on the color of the candle.
Yeah, you're more just looking at the actual size of the bars to understand
Exactly.
volume. That's a
Exactly.
great point. Good question, even better answer. But yeah, man, other than that, I think it's going to be a chill day today. Obviously, we got to keep an eye out. Trump tracker still at a moderate score. Right now,
Yep.
markets obviously in stocks are in risk on and active buying, but this could shift very quickly when you're looking at how the tensions are bubbling. Now, because with this war press conference, we really didn't get any direct information. There's no more clarity, just more confusion. If there are going to be any escalations, it's probably going to be Friday after market close and Saturday. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Always lately, that's been the biggest moves. I've been, hey, he's speaking Friday, Saturday night. Markets
Yeah,
open Sunday, 300-point gap down.
right. And I think this weekend is going to be all right, guys. By the way, ground invasion.
Yeah.
Why do you think we had 10,000 Marines there? Why do you think we sent all these fighter jets there? You know what I mean?
Yep. Not for nothing. Unless, like you said, the Trojan horse, just a scare factor.
Yeah,
But
but I think they're using that as a cover to say like, oh, it was a blockade for the Strait of Hormuz, but it's actually gearing up all of their soldiers right on Iran's doorstep there. So
yep.
it's going to be very interesting for sure.
Yep.
But me personally, I've still been positioned in the I'm positioned in some Euro USD sells, which is following the market analysis, gold sells from the market analysis, and then the oil buys. What have you been playing?
Nice. I'm definitely going to be looking for some longs on the S&P today. I'd like to see a pullback towards that
You want to share
70
your screen?
50.
Oh, you got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect.
I'd like to see that 70-50 area. I've got an area of a volume imbalance from yesterday too in that point. It's our
Yeah.
market pullback level. And when we see such strong markets like this, we rarely get pullbacks at all. So I do
Yeah.
want
It's just been straight an
it's
upside arrow.
yeah, pretty much. So I want to look for, if I'm looking for a pullback, sure, maybe I want a 20-point pullback or 15-point pullback, because then I'm going to be looking for a 40, 50, 60-point rally.
100%. The only risk for me is that SPX is right back to all-time highs and new all-time highs. So as a day trader, whenever you're in price discovery mode, it's like, okay, when are you going to see that bit of algorithmic profit taking or
You know,
change in flow, right? And that
yeah,
that becomes a guessing point now for us with our limited information and resources. That's why I like market, because even in price discovery mode, it still uses a lot of good analytics, mathematical equations to potentially guesstimate where you could have a target point in profit taking. So it is a great tool for traders to use instead of playing the guessing game, where you can still have some confidence trading and even in price discovery mode where you don't have any historical information and base zones off of or expectations off of.
exactly. So something, I'm glad you mentioned that, because yeah, all-time highs, guys, there is no history at these levels. There's no key
Exactly.
levels to come off of. Something I like to look for is key psychological levels, because those are the points every trader, no matter the strategy, every investor is going to be looking at. 7,100, 7,150, 7,200,
70, 69.
70,
Right?
7,420. No,
Yeah, yeah. Bro, these market degens, they're just like us with bigger bankroll.
yeah,
Right?
exactly. G, if you have any levels, any trade setups you want to leave us off on?
No, I'm just keeping an eye on headlines. So this is pretty interesting. So we're seeing obviously the U.S. with 10,000 Navy personnel right there in the blockade. Now we've seen Hegseth through his press conference say that he's looking for other countries to help him. Now we're seeing that Germany is prepared to participate in potential mission. Using wording like mission, Call of Duty, our Call of Duty brains, we know what that means, right? So he's using a potential mission to secure the Strait of Hormuz, contribute to demining, maritime surveillance. So this is potentially giving a clue that the economic activity fallout, these countries that are already weak can't just stand by and keep watching and waiting. And they may need to intervene with their militaries to start to get activity flowing in there, which initially can be an escalation, because Iran is not just going to stand by and bend over and take the knee because another country that's already been against them joins the fight. This is going to be a potential escalation that can take place. So that is something critical I'm going to be looking at with how events are developing and keeping an eye on Hormuz activity. Overall, I'm still going to be sticking to some of those oil buys. I don't think the war has faded yet. Day trading gold sells. I'm in a GJ sell from that GFC global financial crisis price. So SPX, I'm staying out of for now until there's a significant flush out or cleaner structure for me to have more confidence to trade as a day trader. And because accountability wise, I've already been burned quite aggressively trying to short it at certain points where I thought the war was escalating and it made sense with oil pricing. But I completely forgot to keep in the context of these huge AI tech company valuations, the liquidity still flowing into those tech companies, the rebounding on big tech giants as well. So that's a learning lesson for myself. But other than that, I'm still confident in the other positioning and playbooks we've been talking about and sharing ahead of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, this is a great point and a great session too, because Jeev has been trading 10 years now, and he's still saying, listen, I took some losses. It's a lesson. I'm learning from it. No matter where you are in your journey, you're a week into trading, a year into trading, 10 years into trading. Every day you're coming in with the mindset that you're trying to get 1% better and you want to learn something. You're never
100%.
better than the market.
Yeah, you can never think you're better than the market. You can never think you're above the market. Overconfidence is just as deadly as anger and frustration on
Yep.
the emotional sides of the spectrum. I've seen people lose more money being overconfident and cocky on a hot winning streak than some people revenge trading, right?
Yeah.
So that level of maintaining some emotional neutrality and being balanced there is very important. And also being humble and understanding we're always students of the game because markets are continuing to evolve, expand, grow, accelerate. So we need to be as sharp as well and be on the same mindset. That's the mantra we built market with, the terminal, right? We want to have traders go through a simple flow on watching the market dashboard and you feel smarter. You are smarter. You're getting educated just simply trading your asset class and going through this flow, learning about the bias, key levels, the annotations on the screen telling you what's driving price. You can click a simple button to see what could push price up or down, what supports your bias and takes away from it. Because at the end of the day, when people use market as a day trader, we want them to walk away with 3 value points. One of the 3 or all 3, either getting a win, preventing a loss, learning something and educating yourself to be better prepared next time or better prepared to handle an opportunity or manage a risk. That is our goal with our whole design of market, while simplifying the difficult language of fundamentals and being a real-time translator in their pocket, a real-time economist in their pocket that gives them that clarity, that gives them that confidence.
Bro, that's amazing. Yeah, guys, market is a terminal. It's a tool like no other.
Yeah, nothing like this in our space, right?
Awesome. Gee, thank you so much for being here today. What a
It's
great
done already?
listen, man, if you want to keep going, we can keep going.
No, I got another meeting after this as well. I got the Zoom session going on, but man, always a pleasure with you. Hopefully the audience gained value from it. Psychology lessons, fundamental lessons. See how much we have a love for the game and love to share our knowledge, insights, wins, losses, failures, and growth. Right. And if you guys want more, make sure to comment below. Make sure to like, share it around on your socials. It's free for you to do. It provides a lot of support, keeps us motivated to keep this love for the game going and sharing that information with all of you.
That's it, man. That's it. We love what we do, and we hope you guys enjoy it as well. Jeev, thank you for being here today. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.